The Opel Manta B was a stylish rear-wheel drive coupe produced by Opel between 1975 and 1988. The CC variant in particular was appreciated for its practicality, combining the appeal of a coupe with hatchback-like utility. Manta B had a classic 1970s-1980s coupe silhouette, which was a long hood, a short rear, and a sleek roofline. And in 1982, 7 years after the introduction of the Manta B, the Manta received a facelift known internally as the Manta B2, which included updated styling and trim to keep it modern and competitive during the 1980s. The 1982 facelift added plastic bumpers, front spoilers, side skirts, and in some versions a three-piece rear spoiler. The Manta B was offered with a wide variety of engines over its production span. Early models used Opel's traditional overhead valve engines, while later variants adopted newer overhead camshaft designs and fuel injections with a higher output and better fuel consumptions. Eventually, for the B2, a lot of engines were replaced. The 1.2, the 1.6, and the 1.9 liter engines were discontinued and basically replaced by the 1.3, the 1.8, and the 2 liter S and fuel injected engines, although the 75 horsepower 1.9N continued to be available in a few markets. The 1.8S was available between 1982 and 1986, and basically also the 1.3 was available, although that engine already was available during the B1 production period. The 1.8S was available up until 1986 and had 89 horsepower, 143 Nm of torque, and a top speed of 175 km an hour, while having a 0 to 100 time of 11.5 seconds. Fuel efficiency wise, it had 8.5 liters per 100 kilometers and basically had comparable specifications to the 1.9S. You also had the 2.0S available between 1982 and 1983, having similar specifications to the B1 2.0S and having 99 horsepower, 153 Nm, giving the car a top speed of 180 up until 185 km an hour with the 5-speed manual and a 0 to 100 time of 11 seconds. It actually had a somewhat improved fuel efficiency from 8.6 liters to 8.4 liters per 100 kilometers, and basically during the B2 was available with a 5-speed manual. The other engines that were available were actually unchanged, as said before, with the 1.3, which was also included in the B1. The Opel Manta B had a lot of different special versions. Some were made by Opel and others were made externally by individual tuning companies. The one made by Opel was the Manta GTE or GSE. The GTE was the performance version introduced in the late 1970s, featuring fuel injection and a sportier setup. From 1983 onwards it was named GSI in line with Opel's updated naming strategy. It had unique bumpers, spoiler kits and often came with Recaro sports seats. This actually was said before, but you also had the Opel Manta CC, which you also called Combi Coupe, and this was available 2 years after the original introduction in 1975, as it was available between 1977 and 1988, and was introduced and available to the public in 1978. The Manta CC had a liftback rear hatch and fold-down rear seats, blending sporty design with practicality, as when the rear seats were folded down, the car had a trunk of 670 liters, which was actually very good. You also had many Irmscher versions, as said before, as tuning company Irmscher offered high-spec variants such as the earliest i2800 available between 1977 and 1979. This was a 2.8 liter inline 6 made during as a more powerful version of the Manta B1, using an engine also used in the Opel Commodore. It was paired with a 5-speed Getruck gearbox and had 142 to 148 horsepower, 210 Nm of torque, giving the car a good top speed of 215 km an hour and a 0 to 100 time of 8.5 seconds. This, however, was built in very limited numbers, as only about 27 units were made. 4 years later, Irmscher introduced another variant called the i200, which basically was an improved 2.0e made by Irmscher and had 123 horsepower, 163 Nm of torque, giving the car a top speed of 198 km an hour and a 0 to 100 time a bit better than the 2.0e made by Opel of 9.3 seconds. Fuel efficiency wise, it wasn't also that much different from the 2.0e made by Opel, as this was 8.6 liters per 100 kilometers. And this engine also was paired to the Irmscher Manta Real a bit earlier between 1981 and 1982. The i200 was also made for Rally Group B as it was made for rally tournaments, and this had more power as it had 184 horsepower, 210 Nm of torque, giving the car a top speed of 220 km an hour and a 0 to 100 time very good at 6.5 seconds. In 1984, Irmscher introduced another model, this time being the i240, available between 1984 and 1986. Although based on the 2.4i, it was a bit different as it was a little bit less powerful at 136 horsepower, 206 Nm, giving the car a top speed of 202 km an hour and a 0 to 100 time of 8.6 seconds. This was one of the most popular models as 300 units of these were made. Irmscher even made a more powerful variant as a race-tuned version of the 400 or the 2.4i was made for rally tournaments in 1984. And this was very powerful as that 275 to 300 horsepower and 300 Nm of torque, giving the car an actually quite low top speed of 220 km an hour, but for rally this was enough as the 0 to 100 time was 4.5 to 5 seconds and exactly 245 Opel Manta 400s were produced, as this was a law by rally tournaments. The last model made by Irmscher was the i300, and this was a 3-liter inline 6 producing 174 horsepower, 232 Nm of torque, giving the car a bit higher top speed than the 240 and 200 made by Irmscher of 220 km an hour. 0 to 100 time actually was quite comparable to the 200 and 240, as this was 8.4 seconds, and this was basically mainly because the car was a lot heavier with the 3-liter inline 6. And this engine basically came to the market because in 1985 Irmscher bought a handful of unfinished Manta 400 cars from Opel, which were on stock. And these cars had no drivetrains but were fitted with the Phase 2 equipment. And basically Irmscher installed the new 3-liter injected engines from the Monza and Senator models, which delivered 176 horsepower. You also had the Exclusiv edition made by Opel, and this was the final version that came with a full Irmscher body kit, leather or Recaro sports seats made in cloth, quad headlights, side skirts and a large rear wing. And it was the most aggressive looking Manta B to be sold to the public. And for those wanting even more, you also had the Manta Mattig Widebody, and was basically a wildly modified version of the Manta B from the 1980s, tuned by the German company Mattig. It was famous for its extreme wide body kit and was fitted with massive fender flares, deep front spoiler, huge rear rings and oversized wheels. It had a bold race-inspired look that turned heads everywhere, although most of these Manta Mattigs were actually just fitted with an original 2.0e or 2.4 liters engines, though some builds used more powerful inline 6 engines inside. As said earlier, the Manta B was produced for 13 years, between 1975 and 1988, being the longest produced model at the time. During these 13 years, 534,634 units were made, of which 439,518 normal Manta coupes and 95,116 Manta CCs. Noticeable, however, about the production numbers is that the Manta B1 was sold a lot more than the B2, with over 410,000 B1s made between 1975 and 1981, in contrary to the around 120,000 B2s that were made between 1982 and 1988. Throughout its production, the Opel Manta B competed with several other stylish coupes in Europe and abroad, as the Ford Capri was basically its closest competitor in terms of price and layout, but you also had the Renault Fuego from France as a front-wheel drive rival, and also the Volkswagen Scirocco, which was sporty but with front-wheel drive. Predecessor and successor-wise, the Manta was succeeded by the Opel Calibra, produced between 1989 and 1997, which featured a sleek front-wheel drive coupe based on the Vectra A platform, with a more modern styling and a modern feel. This car was presented at the IAA in 1989 and was sold from June 1990, and the predecessor was the Manta A, produced between 1970 and 1975. Thanks for watching this video. To be able to upload more videos in the future, please consider becoming a member of my channel or sending a super thanks on this video. Also, don't forget to check out this playlist with many interesting videos covering various parts of the automotive industry. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more.